All right. So are we starting from here? Good to go?
No, so I'll
Okay.
start. First of all, thank you so much for attending the TME meeting. This is our third event of the semester. We are happy to have Tomo here speaking about being resilient and making your own luck. He's going to talk about his company, the Growing Minds Chess Academy. So yeah, let's get started. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll try to answer them all. Um, and if you have any questions during the session for Tomo, I'm sure he'll be happy to take questions.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, so like our first thing is I'll revise our mission. We are a student organization that focuses on initiating and constructing awareness about entrepreneurship, innovation, and technology commercialization from startup CEOs, venture capitalists, accelerators, and more that helps bridge the knowledge gap between technical and business processes. We're in partnership with UC Entrepreneurship, which is another club located in the Lindner College. Um, And for those who have joined the meeting, can you please sign in? Here's the QR code. I'll also post the link in the chat for you all to sign in so that you can like be a distinguished member of our club and also have voting rights in future meetings. Awesome. So I'll give the floor to you, Tomo. You're free to get started. Yeah, if you want to share your screen, I can stop sharing mine.
Oh no. So yeah, a little bit different from the usual talks, I guess. So I have no PowerPoints, nothing to really share on my screen. It's just going to be pretty much verbal here. But yeah, a little background about myself. So yeah, I'm the co-founder and president of Growing Minds Chess Academy. We are based in New York City primarily. And until COVID, we were pretty much just working with schools in person and running their after school programs, managing their competitive teams. Definitely had to shift a little bit now. So now we also have more of a digital presence. A little background about me too. I started chess when I was 5 years old, and was fortunate to have it like within the curriculum at the school I was entering. So, it's been a real big part of my life. And yeah, today basically wanted to talk about, kind of how my experience was starting my own company and, just from self-reflection and looking back and also talking with other friends who are entrepreneurs as well. Something we kind of realized was, there is a lot of luck involved in things, starting your own company, you'll get like a lot of people who, they cover a lot of other stuff, right? But they always kind of leave that part out. I guess maybe it's not as good for the ego or, but where you're kind of like, well, I was a little lucky. So, kind of looking back on all that and kind of thinking about what really helped me along the way. So basically two things was resilience. And by that kind of mean, overcoming bad situations that you find yourself in and how to stay positive in bad situations as well. Which is actually kind of becoming very important for now too. Like right now with COVID, things are very, different, right? And it's a good kind of mindset to have and kind of know how to make that shift in your brain. And then as far as like the luck goes, like we're not talking about luck as in like, it just actually like, coin flip, you hit heads like 5 times in a row, that kind of luck. But more, what can you do to, so either, when a lucky situation comes around, you're poised to take advantage of that really well, or also just different things you can do in general, where you'll see that it kind of does increase the amount of chances lucky things happen. So that's kind of the big thing. Within that, as far as like when I broke down, how do you create your own luck? There was just kind of maybe three big things. The first one is just, no matter what you choose to do, whatever situation you find yourself in, always give it 100%. Work as hard as you can. Whether you are stuck, cleaning the bathrooms at a McDonald's or, working for a Fortune 500 company, just always give it your all. That is definitely one of the ways to really set yourself up for maybe good things happening. The second thing was just networking and connections. You'll be surprised you won't even know. Like a lot of times, people who I've met who end up helping me down the line, it wasn't like when I met them, I was like, this one, right? I was like, this guy is, definitely going to remember this one. He's going to help me. It really comes from the weirdest places, things you wouldn't expect. So kind of just in general, just meeting people, keeping in touch. You never know when it's actually going to help down the line or when you would need it. Um, and the last thing I think is just, you get some people who are serial entrepreneurs and they're just like, you know what, I just love making companies and they're just all over the place. But at least for my experience, the one thing I did realize is you really should have a passion for what you're doing and really try to make it something that you enjoy. So, if you start your company and it's not really a passion that you're just doing it because you're like, I just want to start a company, right? You'll find like that's where a lot of burnout happens. And that's where a lot of companies also kind of fail too, because it is not an easy path, starting your own company. And if you don't have that passion and the enjoyment behind it, it's hard to kind of make it all the way through. So kind of just starting off, ironically, when I told my girlfriend, I was going to be doing this talk, the first thing she asked me was, "Am I going to be in it?" Um, and of course, the she's also right next to me. So yeah, but of course, the safe answer is always yes, yes, of course, honey, right? You are my world. I'm nothing without you. But actually, thinking about it, she was right though, because this goes back. You never know who's actually going to set you down the road towards entrepreneurship. In my case, it was definitely my girlfriend. When we met, I wasn't even really into chess at that point. I did, 12, I did my whole elementary school, high school, really, really high level competitive chess. And then when I went to college, I kind of was like, you know what? Kind of want a little break. And, I didn't really play much there. And I just thought, chess was fun. It was a nice phase of my life. Just kind of going on to other things now, Um, so it wasn't until I met her where we were one day walking through, Washington Square Park, which, if any of you are chess players, it's kind of a area that's known in New York City where there's a lot of like chess hustlers who play there, and they usually play against the tourists, and they make a little money there. And so we're walking through, and she was like, "Oh, I always thought these were really impressive people. Like they're so good at chess." And I was like, huh. I was like, "They're okay." And she turned to me. She's like, "Why? You think you could do better?" And I was like, "I can probably beat everyone here." And I'm not trying to have ego about it or anything. I just kind of know. And she was just like, "Prove it." So, I sat down, played a game, beat the guy pretty easily. Uh, and she just turns to me. She's like, "You know how to play chess," you know? And at that point, we'd been dating for like maybe 2 or 3 months. And she's like, "You go 3 months and you don't even bring this up." And I was like, "Well, I really thought it was like a phase of my life that I was done with, but, I told her I was 3-time national champion, and was actually, pretty big in it back when I was younger. And ironically, from that point, she was like, "Well, it's kind of fun watching you play. Can we do some more of this? Or is there like tournaments and stuff?" So, around that time, there was one of the largest events called the World Open. And, I told her, I was like, "Well, if you like watching me play, there is the World Open event coming. It's 9 rounds. You'll get to see like plenty of games then. We can play as much, as you want." So, I signed up and attended the event. Um, and the event itself was pretty horrible. Not playing for over 10 years, going into a really, really tough tournament like that. I don't probably wasn't even expecting to do well there. And it didn't help that, we kind of treated it like a tourist kind of opportunity. I'm sitting down to a round, and Eileen's like, "Well, we have dinner reservations in an hour. Can you beat this guy in an hour?" And I'm there, and after an hour's up, I'm looking at him. I'm like, think I'm going to have to give up here. And, my opponent's just like, "What?" I was like, "I have dinner reservations." So that whole thing was kind of just a bad idea. But the funny thing there was I did run into a lot of people who I knew back when I was very competitive in chess. and reconnected with a lot of them. And this is kind of going back to just networking and connections, where, if I never went to that event, I probably wouldn't have reconnected with the people who I needed later on to start my chess business. So that was kind of a big thing there. The other thing where, really Eileen helped me was, there was a teacher at the school we were attending, and her, she was working in her lab. And one day her teacher was just like, well, my son really likes chess, but he doesn't do too well. I wonder if like there's anything I could do to help him. And she mentioned her. She was like, well, my boyfriend actually plays chess, and he's pretty good actually. He can maybe teach you. So she reached out for lessons, and I started working with her son. And her son was kind of at a beginner level. If anyone's kind of familiar with chess, his rating was around 600. Just to give a general idea, grandmasters are at a rating of 2400. So very, very low. But in 4 months we were able to increase his rating to 1200. So he doubled his rating in 4 months. And so the mom was very happy, of course, with the results. But this is also a case too where just always do your best, right? No matter what thing it is. I'm always kind of approach things where if I said I was going to do something, or I decided to do some kind of job or anything like that, I just go all out no matter what. And coming from this, it turned out her son was attending this school in New York City where they were kind of looking for a chess teacher to start their chess program up. So the first thing she did was recommend me for it. So she and I came into her office one day, and she was like, my son's school needs someone. You should go apply. And so this was one where it wasn't my first choice for sure at this time. I was on a completely different track, but I thought it was good to have as like just to make some money on the side. So I applied for the position, and the interesting thing with their one was you had to come up with a 15-minute lesson for kindergarten to first graders and present it to them. And you're going to present it in front of the PTA president and a bunch of teachers and the principal, and they were going to kind of decide out of all the candidates who to hire. And the stuff that actually I learned from this was it was very interesting. Where my first thought, 15 minutes, kindergarten first grader, what kind of lesson could I even put together? And I was like, well, maybe an opening one. If you're familiar with chess, I was like, well, maybe the King's Indian defense, because it's a simple opening. It's just based around creating a certain structure. I can kind of bang that out in 15 minutes. And if I was actually teaching a student, maybe I would want them to know an opening, right? And then I stopped myself and I realized, I was like, if this is the first thing I'm thinking about, it's probably the first thing everyone's thinking about, and this was kind of an interesting one where, just sometimes your first idea is also everyone else's first idea. And, it's good to maybe just branch out from it there. I also realized like, understanding your audience and what they're looking for is also very important, especially if you're pitching or you're pitching your business idea, or if you are, trying to, score a job in this case. And I realized, and these people watching us, they don't know chess. So what are they really looking for? What they're looking for, like, are you interesting? Are you engaging? Does it seem like you would work well with kids, right? You could kind of teach anything, you want at that point, but you have to make sure it's hitting those certain notes. So instead, I kind of did something based on strategy. I added some jokes in there, and I made it kind of more, funnier, and went in with that prepared. And these other people who were interviewing for the job, the interesting thing was a lot of them, has stayed active, right? They probably have like a little bit more fleshed out resume than me, because I have a 10-year gap in chess, and so probably I was lower down on their list as far as who they were expecting to hire. But the first guy goes and presents, and just like I thought, he presented a lesson on the King's Indian. Um, and then, it was my turn. I went up and gave my lesson, and then the guy after me goes up, and it's the King's Indian again. And the guy after him was the King's Indian again. So literally everyone else went with that same exact opening, the same thing I had thought of. And I was the only one who had done something different. So, as everyone's presenting, the guy who presented first just turned to me and he was like, well, congratulations. you know, um, and yeah, so I mean, it was a really good kind of learning experience just going through that as well. You have to learn to differentiate yourself, and obviously I got the job there pretty easily after they went through all of that. Um, but that job was another kind of learning experience on its own too, where it wasn't as good as you would expect it to be, right? Like a lot of people, their dream is to be in charge of a chess program, if you're in the chess industry. But this one, because it was the way they were running it, they were like, well, first of all, we don't want to have to pay you as a full-time employee, so we're going to do it right up to like the last hour that we can. But so that we can pay you as a part-time employee. So they literally, I mean, I was basically working full-time hours, but getting paid as a part-time employee. And on top of that, you would expect to just be doing chess, but they were short-staffed there, and they had me just filling in everywhere. And it wasn't really it wasn't a really good work environment. It's easy in that kind of situation, especially where down the line, had one of the teachers come up and he's like, next year I'm actually going to have your job. They don't want you, long term. You're just kind of filling, and you won't be here next year. And it's easy after that stuff to just be like, well, I mean, just screw this job, right? Like, and you can, it's tempting to just kind of not care, right, or not try. But like I said, this is about resiliency, overcoming bad situations, just staying positive in it. And for me, I think it was kind of focusing more on the kids, where I was like, well, it is a lot of fun actually working with the kids, seeing them improve. And running the team was still fun too. I'm a competitive person, and seeing our team do well kind of helped with that too. So instead of kind of focusing on the bad sides, where I'm like, well, I'm getting treated like this at work, they're going to just get rid of me anyway next year, and all of this, instead just kind of keeping the positive things, like just search for stuff that you can enjoy, or search for the bright spots in your situation, and then just focus on that, and try to block out, all the other negative stuff. I think is really important. It really helps you just kind of, especially when you're dealing with kids and teaching, right? And, dealing with people in person, I felt being able to stay kind of like happy, uplifted, and, no one sees you kind of like moping around or anything. Like it just changes their impression of you, and, it just made it a very good experience for everyone involved. And the crazy thing too was within that year, it went from kids who were just pure beginners, just learning how the pieces moved, to the point where at the very end, we end up winning the national championships that were held in the spring. So, this is the thing too, where you just block out the negative, put your head down, try to find the positives, and then, just do your best, really, really do your best, no matter what it is. I do have another friend who's also an entrepreneur, and he told me too, he was like, what the way he approached his life was the same exact way. It wouldn't matter what he was doing, he was just going to do it to the very best of his abilities, just go 100% into it. And it really, that approach helped him, kind of build up his company, and also expand. Like he actually owns, more than one now. And it's definitely something we kind of feel like is a very important part of the entrepreneurial process, actually. Um, the interesting thing coming from this too was, and this is where there is that luck involved, but it just so happened they were building this new private school in New York City, called Avenues, the World School, and it was just going to open the next year. So there was actually families who were at this other school where I had just had this amazing year with, where we went and won the national championships, and they were transferring over to this new school. So at the end of the year, a few of them came up to me and they were like, there is this new school starting, and we would love to start a chess program there as well. So can we bring you over? So it just shows where if I had taken like the negative approach, to that job, if I hadn't tried as hard, right? If all of that stuff, I never would have gotten the opportunity, right? It's lucky timing wise, they happened to build that school, but there is that element of creating your own luck, right? Like just doing your best, and then lucky situations can happen. And also it gets you to the point where when something lucky does happen, right, you are ready to really take advantage of it. So this was a case where, yeah, it was lucky, but I also had put myself in the best possible situation. So going, that kind of was nice to know too, where even though I was leaving that other program, I had somewhere else to go right after that too. So kind of going into the whole time at Avenues now, uh, basically, it was kind of a chaotic, kind of Wild West time, because they were just a new school, just started. All these different families had different ideas, and coming in there, another family brought in a different teacher as well too. So they were like, well, we'll just have you both kind of run it together. And it's another case too where it's not ideal. I feel like some people get tempted to try to like undercut the other person they're with. But my approach to it was like, well, let's make the best of the situation, right? Just try to stay focused on creating a program, teaching the kids and trying to do as well as we can with the team. Meanwhile on his end, I think he was just more kind of very prickly about just having me around. And I think you'd be surprised how much people are observing you like at all times. So whether you're at a job, in the workplace, in my case, trying to deal with the families and coaching the team, everyone was watching. It turns out, so they see, he would take little personal shots here and there at me. He would, kind of be a little negative, in certain interactions and stuff. And even though you think nobody's watching, the families were actually watching. So it was kind of just an interesting experience going through that, where I tried to keep it positive the whole time. The other guy kind of chose to make it a little bit negative, and it kind of backfired on him a little bit. And that first year, we did pretty well. Like really, coming from the previous school, I did develop a reputation for being able to kind of take kids from nothing and all the way up to the top. And building, programs really quickly. So, they were kind of expecting something similar. And while we didn't win the national championships, again, we still did very well, like on a local level, so city and state level. And towards the end of it, the school did kind of approach me and was like, well, the parents, have different opinions about who they want and who they like and what to bring in and stuff. But the one thing they all seem to agree on is you, though. So it seems like you're kind of a safe choice where, would you be willing to come in and run the program, here? And this was an interesting one where you would think I immediately just jump on it. But at that time, I still wasn't sure. And it kind of ties down to what I was talking about earlier, where, really make sure that it's your passion, and that's something you're going to enjoy. And when I was looking at it at that point, I was like, I'm not sure this is what I want. I'm not sure this is where I want to go with things in general. So I did turn them down that first year, and instead I recommended someone else to come in and run the program. If I'm not sure if people follow chess too much, or even kind of the Twitch streams nowadays, where Hikaru Nakamura is a pretty big name now. And the person I recommended to come in is his stepfather, because he was the one who ran our program at Hunter back in the day. So, I told them, this is someone who taught me. He runs the program at Hunter, where I went to school, and he should probably do a good job. So they actually reached out to him, asked him to come run the program, and he did a weird thing where he chose to take it, but he didn't really actually want to work there or oversee it. So he hired someone else to run it for him and put them in there. And the parents were a little bit kind of iffy about that choice, and so they kind of made it a requirement that I still be involved then if he was going to do it this way. So the second year, I was once again kind of sharing responsibilities with someone else again, kind of trying to help them run the program. And it was a very similar experience to the first year as well. Maybe a little bit worse because this guy would just email families just trying to trash me, and yeah, it was very interesting because the whole time I was trying to support him, and so the parents are hearing from me, oh, he's a good guy, he's a good teacher, just give him time, he'll come around. And meanwhile, they're getting a message from him where he's just like, oh, Tomo's a horrible teacher, he's garbage, just try to get him out of here, like we don't need him around. And so it's a similar thing too, where people are going to look at that and then they're going to also think, well, who do we actually want like in charge, right? Who's kind of bringing a better environment? And the interesting thing about that year as well, and kind of tying into resilience in a different way too, it was a year where personally I was having a lot of problems. I had a good amount of savings, but it was kind of running low at that point. And I was subletting a rent controlled apartment in Harlem, and that was about to end in a few months. And it really, looking around, especially in New York City, for a place to live, it was really hard. Everywhere you go, the landlords are very cocky. They're like, well, if you don't sign, we get someone else in 2 seconds, easy. And kind of felt like getting treated like a criminal. It was a really not fun time going around trying to find a place that I can move into once the subletting was up. And it really kind of put me in a very bad situation where I know, like, my girlfriend looked and she's like, what are you going to do? She's like, you're so screwed. And this is a case too where instead of kind of focusing on the negative and being like, yeah, I'm done, there's no hope here, or instead of focusing on like just how bad things are, and how getting stressed out about, like, I didn't even know where I was going to live in a few months. I just instead was like, well, there's certain things that I have no control over, right? And it's not just not worth worrying about then, because all that does is kind of creates more distractions, creates extra noise in your mind. And yeah, you kind of, to a certain extent too, you could just end up building up a lot of anxiety, and just kind of get frozen up by it. So this was a good case too, where, instead of worrying about all of that, I just kind of was like, well, let's kind of focus on what can I actually control, right? What can I actually change? What can I do? And then, on top of it, just starting to set certain goals. So I think for me, what helped me a lot at that time was just kind of being like, well, what do I want, right? And kind of top on the list, one of it, just from the whole experience from trying to find a place to rent, I was like, you know what? I want to be able to make enough that, like, I could just walk in somewhere and rent whatever the hell I want, right? I don't want to be going places and feeling like I'm a criminal when I apply to their rental units, right? I don't want to have to go through what I just went through ever again, and then tied into that too, I was like, I'm also going to making my goal. I'm going to just shoot for like $100,000 in the next 4 months, right? Like somehow. And, I think it's good to set kind of realistic goals, right? And it's also good to just have like a reach goal, like something where you're kind of like, well, that'll probably never happen, right? But it does kind of give you something to strive for. So like the 100,000 thing was definitely like, I mean, I didn't expect it to happen, right? And I know my girlfriend was kind of like, well, you're delusional, right? But you know, I set like one reach goal, and then I set a few like more reasonable ones where I was like, you know, I would like to kind of build something, start something. You know, I want to actually have some financial stability, and you know, like just being having a better rental experience too, right? I just would like to actually have it a little bit easier there. You know, so I think that really helped. That helps kind of keep you focused, like on those days when you're just completely worn out, completely beat. You know, that kind of just keeps you going. You know, so for me, like, you know, set one reach goal, set a couple more like reasonable or goals you think you can hit. Use that to keep your focus on stuff, and you know, just really try stay focused on the stuff you can actually change. Don't focus on things you have no control over, you know. And on top of that, once again, you know, look for the positives, right? Things that you can be like, well, you know, overall a crappy situation, but at least there's this, right? Or you know, maybe let's say you have a job you don't enjoy right now, right? You can just be like, well, what is one thing I kind of like about it though, or is it okay at least, right? What's like a tolerable thing about it? At least you can then just focus on that. It really kind of helps you kind of block out all the negative noise, and helps you kind of stay focused on, you know, the things you need to do. So that was kind of the approach that year where, you know, even though there was a lot of kind of bad things happening on the personal level, even though even on the professional level, you know, I'm just working with this guy who's just out to get me. You know, just kind of it allowed me to still stay very positive. You know, like nobody who met me at that time can guess like what I'm going through, you know, personally, or you know what I'm going through, you know, with this guy I'm working with too. You know, it was really just kept things positive, and you know, just upbeat. So you know, we kind of ended that year, and you know, the kids all were there was just definite growth and improvement, you know, and the families who were watching it all were also kind of like, well, you know, we really do like this guy a lot more. So they went to the school again after the second year, and they're like, can we hire him? You know, we like him a lot more. We actually trust our kids with him more, and you know, we would like him to actually run the program. So you know, that kind of ties in to like year three, where by that point, you know, I did have enough experience now in teaching, coaching chess, and working with kids where I realized, you know, I do enjoy it. It was a very rewarding, you know, experience. You know, I do have fun teaching people, you know, and you know, I initially had wanted to go into the healthcare field because my goal was I wanted to help people in general. Like I wanted to help people. I thought I'd wanted to heal people. You know, but I realized through this, you know, it's very similar. You're still kind of helping people as well, and it's still very rewarding. So, you know, this was the point where it kind of finally knocked that part out, where I was like, you know, I think if I did start a company in this, I think I would actually enjoy it. I think I would have a passion for it. You know, I think, you know, I would be able to really devote myself to this. So, you know, when they finally came up to me the third year, you know, I accepted. But I also realized, you know, the kind of school they were building, it was going to be so huge. Like, it's really one person was not going to be enough to run it. And so this goes way back to once again, you know, my girlfriend and that World Open tournament. You know, in the beginning of this talk, where you know all the people who I had reconnected with back then, I had kept in touch with through the years up to this point, and I was able to then reach out to a few of them. Where you know I had remembered one of them specifically was like, well, I'm thinking of starting my own chess company. You know, the funny thing about starting your own chess company, you know, for the most part, uh, you can't really do it unless you have like a base program. You know, you do need a school that you are running, right, and managing, and then from there you could build out to more schools and grow your company. So you know, in his case, he, you know, has started a company, but he had no program. And in my case, I had a program, but I realized I do probably need some partners here, and I do need to start a company. So it was kind of a perfect match. And I think it was something where, you know, you just never know. If I had never met him back in the World Open, it could have been a lot different now. If I hadn't met my girlfriend either, I probably never would have been at the World Open, and wouldn't have had any of those connections that I have now. So it's really crazy, looking back on things and how like kind of how much luck is involved. But this was a case where I was lucky I even met my girlfriend. I was lucky that we happened to be walking through Washington Square Park at that time. I was lucky that the lab she was working in happened to have a professor who had a child who played chess. And I was lucky that I went to the World Open. I was lucky she actually liked watching chess that much that she wanted to go to the World Open. It's so much luck involved all the way through. It's kind of mind blowing, but the whole point too was just, well, I still did work hard, right? I did actually reconnect with people, and I still worked on keeping those connections. Whenever situations were really bad or negative, I still tried to keep a positive outlook, and still worked my hardest, even when I knew I was only there for a year at that first school, right? Even when I wasn't sure if this was something I wanted to do, right? It's easy to kind of just, prioritize certain things over it, right? Like everyone's kind of like, well, I'm too busy. There's too many things going on. So I'm going to work like this hard on this, maybe this much on this and then this much. Whereas in my case, I was like, well, anything I do sign up to do, they're all getting my maximum, right? So if I don't think I can give it my maximum, I'm just not going to pick as many things to do then. And I think that's kind of also another way you can approach things too, where, you don't have to do 10 things all at the same time or at once. Try to find like 2 or 3 that you really, want to do or are interested in, and that, then I can kind of give my all to this amount, right? If it turns out you can only give your max to like 1 or 2, then, that's probably a good one to go for. There's no need to overextend. So really just try to figure out how much energy do I have, how much is my bandwidth, how far can I spread myself, right? But I think you're going to find that it's a lot more rewarding when you are giving your 100% at a small amount of things versus maybe just 50% at like 20 different things, so kind of just the ability to filter it out, to really keep your focus, find just a few things. And it kind of helps you overcome any kind of obstacles you do run into, so from that, when we finally got in touch with the friend of mine, and we started our company too, because by that point I had kind of thought things out, felt it all out, and I knew that first of all, I do enjoy this, definitely have a passion for it, but also I was like, I knew that I would be able to really like dedicate myself 100% to this thing. That's kind of what also helped it succeed in the long run too, because starting your own company, whether it's a chess company or tech company, or anything, you go through a lot of sleepless nights. You end up working maybe like 20-hour days, sometimes 7 days a week. Like it is a grind, and so you really need to have those things worked out if you are going to kind of be successful, or if you want to make sure you put yourself and your business in the best position for success. Figuring out these things, and kind of figuring out a way to deal with stress, right? Figuring out a way to deal with negativity, right? That's a huge thing. So kind of learning to block out the bad, just focus on the good stuff. And, using that, I think it really helped me even later on than when we started our company, because there was a lot of points where I could have just burnt out really easily. There's a lot of points where, there are a lot of frustrations, a lot of hurdles, and, running into them, it's easy to just kind of lose your way. I think there's times too where sometimes people think it's just not worth it anymore, so really the fact that it was something I had a big passion for, when you do hit those times where you're like, wow, I have maybe slept a total of like 6 hours this entire week, you can kind of look at it and be like, but it's still worth it, right? Versus sometimes people look at it and they're like, that's I want kind of a normal life. I want a normal schedule. This is kind of getting crazy. So yeah, I think the ability to do these things, really can help you, not just with starting up companies, but also just making it all the way, making it through to the other side. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much wraps up what I have prepared now. So we could move to the Q&A part if you'd like.
Thank you so much for telling your story. I think it was very inspiring, and I mean personally, I learned a lot in this like half an hour, 45 minutes. I'll open the floor to questions if anyone has. You can either put them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask it directly.
Hey, I'm not sure if this is just me, but it says you can't send messages in chat. I'm not a member of the chat. Do you know how? Is anyone else having this issue?
I I don't have that issue. I mean, if you have any questions, you can ask directly. I'll check that out.
Sure. Well, I was just gonna say, of course, thanks again for the great talk. But my first question, or my only question at the moment is like, was it more of like, as you were kind of growing your business, was it more of I really like chess, or I really like teaching, I really like helping, like you mentioned some ties to like the medical field, or was it kind of both? Like, what would you say kind of, you say it's worth it. What was worth it for you?
So I think the biggest one was, I do really like helping people, and I think that was the initial draw. But I did realize also getting back into chess, I did really enjoy the game too. So it was something where, I kind of forgot over the years, right? I spent my entire childhood doing it, right? So obviously I enjoyed it and I liked the game. I think the time off I took during that time, I did kind of forget a little bit of why I enjoyed it, why I liked it so much. So it was a little bit of both where, being reintroduced to the game again, kind of brought back that initial like love for the game. And then when on top of that, it turns out like, oh, you can actually help people doing this. That was kind of the selling point that I was like, okay, awesome. We got two things that I really enjoy, and we got put together, right? So I think that was how it was for me.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. I think there's a question in chat, right? So yeah, what would you consider as the uncontrollable factors? So for example, like the guy just deciding he hates me, right? That I'm working with, that would be a good example. Like I can't really, if he wants to, hold something against me, if he wants to trash talk me, there's not much I can do, right? That's kind of one of the uncontrollable things. Or just in the personal situation, the fact that I wasn't going to have somewhere to live in like 4 months, right? That's kind of I couldn't change that. So it's kind of factors like that, right? Is kind of what we consider just uncontrollable ones where it definitely does add stress to your life, but what's focusing on it is going to do what though, right? Like it's not going to help you. So that's kind of just figuring out those ones, right? And just being like, okay, well, we're just going to have to block that one out.
Does anyone else have any other questions? I guess I can ask one. Yeah, like the whole session you have talked about your story and basically how like you went from not like getting out of chess and then getting back into it, and then how you built your company and how you were resilient and how the opportunities popped up for you. Um, like what challenges has like this COVID-19 presented, and how have you overcome that? Like how like being resilient has motivated you during this time?
Yeah, it's actually really interesting too because my alma mater, Vassar College also actually is doing like a series on, kind of how to cope with COVID, right? And this crazy time period we're in. And one of the ones that one of the lectures they had kind of prepared was called resiliency, actually, in times of COVID, right? So it was really funny because they actually hit on that point as well, where they were like, yeah, learning to be resilient is going to be very important. But for me specifically, like I said, we were primarily focused on schools, right? Like in-person schools. So all of a sudden, all the schools are closed, right? Or at least that was how it was March, April, May, and we held in-person tournaments, right? We would do tournaments where we had anything from 280 to 350 people attending, right? That's just children, and then you add like one parent or two parents who are going with them, you end up with like almost 1,000 people, right? Just huge events, and we would hold it like once a month, So everything our business was based just in person, tied down to schools in a lot of cases. So definitely kind of that was one of the some of the big challenges COVID presented. Though what we did with that was we quickly pivoted to digital online platforms. So usually we ran summer camps over the summer. So instead we ran online summer camps, and kind of starting to flesh out tournament software where we can host tournaments now online. So we finally got that rolling. We actually even have anti-cheat software too, because I mean, people would cheat at anything, I guess. So we have anti-cheat software that we run to make sure that the game is still being played correctly. We can host events now online digitally. And if anything now, it was a nice opportunity for growth in some ways, because when places do start to open up again, now we have kind of two things. We have in-person tournaments, and we still have our online platform, online tournaments, online, and the reach you get is actually much larger, of course, when you're through the internet. So now when we run camps, we get people from like England, and Canada, like places we have no idea. We're like, how did you even find us, right? But it's really cool because it's given us a chance to kind of increase our audience. I think there is so more questions in chat. Tips on how to keep your focus when that kind of uncontrollable things come up. So yeah, basically, it was kind of like I was saying there, where so instead of worrying about that stuff, right, and focusing on that, find something that is a positive, right? It could be anything. Like it's in some cases, literally, I resorted to, well, at least I still have a place to live right now, right? And just be like that's going to, and it sounds kind of depressing maybe, but like, it literally was like, well, I still got a place now, which means I still have time, and I can still use this opportunity to do something, right? Or if you're lucky enough, or in my case too, where I was enjoying working with the kids, I can focus on that more, where I was like, I can't wait for tomorrow and see how they're doing, how they're improving. We have a tournament coming up maybe this weekend. I can't wait for that, and to see how we do, right? Kind of focusing on those kind of things instead. And it just kind of helps you kind of shift gears, right? Because once you start going down like a negative path, you do kind of spiral sometimes too, right? Where then you're thinking about the next bad thing and the next bad thing, So instead of like letting yourself kind of just go in that direction, the moment you start feeling those thoughts and stuff, just stopping yourself, be like, okay, that sucks, but what is there good, right? Kind of ironic, maybe kind of what people do with Thanksgiving, where they sit down, they're like, so what are we thankful about, right? But really almost something like that, where you're like, well, what is something good that's going on though, right? Or what can I actually be thankful about? What can I do then, and whatever it is, just focus on that, and even if it's just only one thing, just keep that one thing in mind, and it really does kind of keep you afloat. It definitely stops you from spiraling. And then you just are going to have more energy to actually try to fix your situation that you find yourself in. There's another question too. At what point would you say that you would switch your grind? Okay, the efforts that you're putting are not paying off and you switch away from it. So that's kind of interesting. You know, there's people who I've met who kind of go in either direction where, you know, you could say the point that you would switch your grind would be the point where you are no longer passionate about it, right? If you find yourself in something and you're like, you know what, I actually hate this, right? For me, that's probably where I would switch, right? I would change if I was like, let's say I thought it would be great to start a chess business and I'm doing it and you know we're grinding and then you know probably not just one day but let's say you know day after day I start waking up and I'm like you know what I really hate this, not enjoying it at all, I see no positives here, I'm dreading every day, you know. I think when if you get to that point, that's when you should probably switch, right? You know, there are people who try to take a more pragmatic approach, maybe where they're thinking, well, you know, let's just be realistic here, right? This is just not working, so cut our losses and let's do something else, you know. But I think you know, and I think there's nothing wrong with that approach as well. But I think the way I always like to do it was, you know, I like to try to see it through as far as I can because I don't want to have that like that what if, right? The little kind of nagging questions where you're like, well, you know, I kind of hit like a little roadblock, but what if I actually saw it through? What if I made it, right? So for me, you know, I do like to go all the way, but if I hit a point where I'm like, I'm not, this is, I just hate it. That would be where I would switch. Hmm.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that insightful session. I'm gonna, if it's okay, I'm gonna post your website link in the chat so that people can access it. And yeah, there I've put his website link, gmchessacademy.com. So you can go and look up like his team, his bio, and about the company. And if you're interested, if anyone you know is interested in learning about chess, maybe this is a great opportunity for them. Um, yeah, okay, let's go ahead. This is the end of our session for today, and our next event um, would be on November 11 at 5 p.m., which is 3 weeks from now. If you remember from our first session, Dr. Matthews talked about Ryan Eder, one of his students. So we are going to be inviting him as a speaker. We are still finalizing details for the event, but everyone will receive an email and invite. So basically, stay tuned for that. If you want to contact us, here's our contact, tme@uc@gmail.com. And if you want to like talk to me personally, you can use the second email. I like talking to people, so feel free to reach out. Yeah, follow us on Instagram. We at UCTME, and like on Twitter, we're at TechnoUC. And that's it. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Thank you, Tomo, again for attending and speaking to our members. I'm sure everyone got a more inside view about your company and yourself, and it was very inspiring.
All right. Thank you for having me, though. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Yeah.
Great job. Thank you very much.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.